welcome everyone. We appreciate you joining us here on the Business Success webinar. I'm Shandy Brinkman. I'm with the Education Department of Gamble, and I'm here filling in for Andrew and Bobby tonight. So the boys are taking a night off, although Andrew may join us in a little bit. So if we see him pop in, that's that. We hope he makes it. We'll introduce our guests for this evening. We've got Kayla Bain and Donna Quezada. And so we're excited that both of these ladies have joined us here this evening to talk about their quilting journeys. So what we'll do is we'll kind of start, we'll start with Kayla and ask her our big long list of questions and learn more about her quilting journey. And then we'll switch to Donna. But Donna, if you have anything you want to say or join in, we'd love to hear from you while we are talking. Real quick though, before we start the whole back and forth thing, Kayla, you want to just tell us where you're from and the name of your business, and Donna, you do the same?
Yeah, so I'm located in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin, and my business is called 31 Lemons.
And I'm Donna Quezada, and I live south of Seattle in Enumclaw, Washington. And my business is called Donna Q's Creations.
All right. Well, thank you again both for being here. So we'll start with Kayla. So Kayla, can you tell us how long you've been long arm quilting for?
Well, just under 3 years.
Oh.
So I I guess you could say 3 years if that's prior to owning my own machine. But I don't have much under my belt. It's all a new game for me. Sorry, I'm looking this way because that's where my long arm is. I have to be enduring, right? I have to look at it like I love it, so it will treat me nice too. But yeah, I'm fairly new. I'm not a huge piecer, but I have found a love and passion for digitizing and being able to use my Statler.
Awesome. Awesome. So what made you decide to start long arming?
Well, I wanted a creative outlet, really, is what it came down to. I went up on a trip with my mom to Hudson, Wisconsin to rent some time on a machine. I didn't want to go. I had 2 under 2 at the time, and my mom said she looked at me and knew I needed a break, right? So she invited me up to go with her because she had a girlfriend that lived up there. So she had taken the classes to play on a gamble before I had. By the end of it, I was telling her what to do and how to use the machine, you know. So on her 4.5, 5-hour drive home, my mom said, Kayla, you can turn this into a business. You can buy one of these. You can do this. And I said, no, I can't. I've got 2 young kids at home, and I don't have the time for it. I don't have the time for it. And she said, that's exactly why you need to do it. You know, so that way I could stay at home with my kids and run a business off my own hours. So it's not something that I knew I wanted to do right away. Of course, making a purchase like this takes some time, and it took me, well, 2.5, 3 years after that. My kids were going off to school. Stella was going into school full time, and I knew I needed something more for myself. So at the time I went back to my local dealer and I said, hey, can I check things out again? And they said, well, prices go up at midnight tonight. So, give us a check to hold the spot. So that's what I did. And we talked about it a little bit more. And we knew that as a family that I needed something to be more creative, to get out of just being mom and chef and housekeeper and all those things. So it was great to be able to put that intensity into something for me, but still provide for my family at the same time.
That's awesome. Well, and it seems like a quick decision, having less than 24 hours, but really it's something it sounds like you'd been thinking about tossing around for a while.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it was just the straw that broke the camel's back, right? we needed the push, and we definitely got the push.
Sometimes you just need that little extra nudge.
That's what happened.
We call that destiny, right? Yeah, for sure.
Right.
All right. So it sounds like when you got your long arm, you already were thinking business is what I want to do with this. Is that
Yeah, I guess because I'm not a piecer. So I didn't have enough of my own to warrant having something like that. And this, I knew that I wanted to gamble because of it being a workhorse and it's a industrial machine. So I didn't really look at any other brands. I went straight to gamble, and I'm so glad that I did. I hear stories of other people not starting with the gamble, and I'm just glad I didn't take that path too.
yeah, I understand. All right. So I know you hadn't really looked at other brands, but was there anything particular? Did you have any other experience at all, or never? You just kind of had that one experience with the gamble, and then that was
That
it,
was
huh?
it.
Okay,
Yep,
awesome.
that was it. Um, it was one of those things that if I'm going to use it as a business, you got to get the top of the line right away so that you can succeed from the beginning. That's the last thing you want, is to be dealing with maintenance of a machine that you don't really know all that much about. So when I got my machine, they said, "Well, do you want to learn about the maintenance first or stitching?" I said, "Oh, maintenance. Like, well, my mind is fresh. Let me learn about maintenance." And they said, "Oil it, dust it." you know. So that was one that I went, "Okay, sounds good. I bought the right machine, right?"
You're like, all right, now let's move on to stitching.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Awesome. And so you started immediately with the Statler, right?
I did.
System.
Yeah, I can't draw, and as far as free motion goes, Statler owners always say, "Oh yeah, I'd love to do free motion." Right now in my life, that's not something I have time for,
Yeah.
and that's something that takes practice and just doodling. Not even with the machine, something you put pen to paper. And I maybe if I made time for it, I'd have time for it, but that's not what I want. I like to be hands-on with creative studios and play in that. So why break something that's working?
Yeah. And when you were at the quilt shop with your mom, like years before you actually purchased, was that what they had there to use as well? Was it a Statler, or did you have any?
Yeah, they had
You
a
already
stat.
had.
I think they had two Statlers in their facility, and then they were working on getting a third, financing for a third.
Awesome. Good. And I guess you still have that same one today, right beside you, right?
Yeah, I do. Still over here.
Yeah.
It's moved homes a couple times, but other than that, no new parts. No, that's not true. I got the approach foot system, so we do
Oh,
some
nice.
new parts,
Nice.
which I'm thrilled to have. When I started a few years ago, doing some other things with it than just an edge to edge, I thought, oh, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. And then now that I have it, I go, it's been the best thing. It really has.
Awesome. Fun. So no Ascend yet though, right?
No, not yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
We'll keep working on you. Sorry.
Right.
Awesome. So now since you were kind of new to the whole long arming and quilting world, really, did you have an idea if there was enough quilting business or enough business to support, your new endeavor when you started?
So I guess really the answer is no. Um, but from talk from just being in quilt shops or fabric stores, seeing cards, people always talk about long arming. One, I don't even know what that is. And two, I don't know how to contact one. I don't, and I think contacting a long armor can be, I don't want to say scary, but a lot of them work out of their homes. So, which is a great thing. I love being able to work out of my home. But when you're searching for somebody new, um, not many long armors have a website for you to go to because they don't need it. A lot of um, long arming, a lot of that advertising is spread by word of mouth. And when you're new into quilting, you don't hear too much about it unless you're in a guild or you're in a close group with other people. So my area in particular, I went to local quilt shops and I asked them, hey, who do you use? Who do you suggest? Who do you recommend? Some of them had long arms right in their store. And then I asked pricing and what their turnaround time is. Turnaround time is usually a pretty good factor on how many clients they have, because if they say, oh, we're 8-10 weeks out, well, then there's room in the market for another long armor.
Makes total sense. So so that's how you determine about the market. How did you find your customers and grow your business?
Well, in Janesville, I started the business in Janesville, excuse me. I'm now in Wisconsin Dells, but starting in Janesville, I started off with a Google business account. And that helped a lot because when anybody's just searching for a business, that's one of the first things that comes up is a Google business page with a website, an address, all those fun things. So that helped a lot. Otherwise, going back to these local shops and trying not to infringe on their business, right? But these long armors, if they're happy with their clients, they don't care about competition because they have enough business. There's enough to go around, right? So passing out cards to those people, and what helped me a lot is that people in my area refuse to do custom. They'd only do edge to edge. So I was willing to do digital custom, not free motion custom. And that was good because then they still felt like they could pass out my card without competition.
Mm-hmm.
I also joined a guild in Janesville, and I don't know, just getting myself out there in craft fairs and anything to get your name out helps, because it's advertising whether you think of it that way or not, right?
Right. Absolutely. Awesome. So how did you fund that first machine, or your machine? Did you finance or did you do something different?
Yeah, we actually had half saved up already. So again, not knowing that that's what that money was going to be used for, because it was a last minute decision. But we had a half down payment first, and then we had financing after that.
Okay.
And now it's paid off, which is exciting. Yeah, that's great. So,
How long did that take you to pay off the machine?
well, the goal was to have it under 5 years, and that was done. I bought it in 21. I think I gave the check in July of 21. And then after quilting, I applied for a position at Gamble. So I am now a Gamble educator, and I've used the money from that to finish paying off the machine.
All right. So did you have any other job before that, working like while you were quilting, or was it solely the quilting?
No. So what I did, the goal, of course, was just to quilt and to pay off the machine. But my husband and I talked about it, and really we didn't want to lose any money, right, by starting a business. Even if the business itself wasn't making money, I wanted to make sure that I had a way to pay off that monthly payment without going negative in our personal account, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anytime that I could, I would take up a sub job at the local school, and those paychecks went straight to that monthly payment. Now, there are months that I absolutely did not need to sub, but I paid attention and went, okay, how many days do I have to sub? How can I make this work? How can I still stay at home and not have any, I don't want to say any debt with the machine, because there was debt, right? Because we financed, but how to effectively pay that off.
Let's see. About how many hours do you spend now quilting for others these days?
Well, I guess there's the post-Christmas slump, right? So January and early February are actually fairly slow months. I don't know if you guys feel this at all. I'm sorry, was it Donna?
Mhm.
Yes.
Do you have the post-Christmas slump too, or is it just my business around here?
No, I'm in post-Christmas slump right now.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
typically after Christmas, everybody spent their money on Christmas, or they spent their quilting money already preparing a gift for somebody, because most quilters give their quilts away, right?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
usually there's a lag time, especially in January for me.
Yes.
Um, so February has hit now, and I've gotten more. I want to say I'm at the machine at least 3 days a week.
Oh,
And those are probably solid days of having quilts on.
oh. So outside of January and February, is that kind of about where you try and stay as well, 3 days a week?
It's sporadic. It all depends, because in the spring, a lot of quilters are gardeners too. I've seen this anyways. I don't know, Donna, if you've seen this too, but spring hits and you want the fresh air, you want to be outside, you don't feel like you're stuck at your machine. So I I don't want to say that um things are really consistent, because for me in my area, they're not.
Not.
Depending on where other people are,
Oh,
it might be completely different, but um
yeah.
it definitely ebb and flows for me here in Wisconsin.
I
So
I would agree with that. That the business ebbs and flows.
yeah,
Yeah. But then there's places here that are so busy. There's quilt shops here that are so busy that without the long arming, they'd be out of business.
sure.
The
Mhm.
long arming is what has kept them in business.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So I know you do both edge to edge and custom quilting. Is that right, Kayla?
Yeah,
Is
I
it
do.
pretty equal, or would you say you do one more than the other?
No, it's definitely edge to edge versus custom. Um, Custom, we just price people out of the water. People say, "Oh my gosh, it's so expensive. It's so expensive. I can't afford that." And I'm going, "Yeah, but you don't realize how much time I'm actually taking and doing.
yeah, that's right.
It, it's a lot of putsy work, and if you are as particular maybe as I am, or other folks are, it takes more time and finesse, and that adds up. And that's something that should be said for any long armor coming into the game, is that um, don't doubt your worth. Because if you don't want to give your work away, it is a
No,
specialty what we're doing. Not all people can do this, and not all
correct.
people have the equipment that we have to be able to do this.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think that's pretty important for
Absolutely.
anybody coming into the game to know, is make sure you're getting paid what you're worth.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you do your pricing? Do you do it by the hour or by the square inch?
I do it by the square inch.
Okay.
So my pricing, I never tell the customer when they come to me, this is the price you're going to get, because if I get to the machine and there's only so much looking at their quilt top that you can do when they're right in front of you. You don't want them
Right.
seeing, inspecting things
Yes.
and pulling things apart and judging their work. And honestly, once you get it on the machine and under the light, you see a lot more problems than maybe what you saw taking a first glance at it. So I need
Correct.
to tell them a price up front, because things change when you get it onto the machine. It's not just about the pattern and how many starts or stops or sharp points you have. It's
Right.
everything. Everything gets included in that price. So
Like how many seams doesn't actually connect?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
So do you charge both of when you're doing custom, do you do that by the inch as well?
I do. I do.
Okay.
Some people do by the hour, but um, I keep track of my hours. I do. I pay attention, and then that price per square inch goes up.
Awesome. Do you have about an average that you would say you charge total for like a a queen size quilt, maybe?
Well, let's see. Let me do the math here. About what size is a queen?
Well,
With that.
72 by 90.
All right, sure.
Let's just take that size of a quilt. I'm not sure if that's a lap or a queen, but let's just do a 72 by 90.
So depending on the pattern, right? And this is on the low end, it would be about 150. But that doesn't include thread because I do charge thread separately. I charge per bobbin. And I also charge for, of course, any batting that they may want. Any additional fees, like if they don't have their backing seamed and they want me to do it, that's an additional seam. If they want a pattern match with the seam, that's an additional fee. You know, there's all these little things that or an ironing fee. Oh, I don't like ironing. So, you know, if they come in with something that's wrinkled and I know it's going to affect the end result and it needs to be ironed, that's another fee, you know? So and it's not always about slapping on fees just to put fees on. That's not what I'm getting at. It's, you want to be compensated for your time is what it comes down to.
well, and it
Yeah.
makes sense, you know, because not all quilts need that. So, I mean, if you're charging what that quilt actually needs, then, you know, customers who might not need that are getting kind of a break in a way. So you can look at it both ways.
Well, and it's stated on my website, it's stated clearly of what my expectations are when you bring something to me. And a lot of those things can be seen at the client meeting, right? But again, not everything, you know, can be seen too. So
Yeah.
you have those prices there and out for them to see so that they know that if they got a charge, that you can go back to your website or your requirement sheet and show them why it got to the price that it got to.
All right. And let's see. Oh, I forgot to mention as well when we started that if anybody has a question, there's a Q&A box down in the middle of your screen. So you can always type a question in there as well. And we actually have a first question from Cindy. She's wondering, Kayla, do you give your customers a ballpark price prior to beginning the work? And have you ever had a customer balk at the cost?
The answer is no, I don't. I let them know that my quilting starts at a certain price and it can go up from there. When I give invoices back to clients, I always email them that invoice before I meet them in person for pickup. So then they can have
Smart idea.
they have the sticker shock on their own time, right? You know, you don't have that awkward or the embarrassment. They can see that on their own and then they can prepare their cash or check or whatever they need to do in order to pay for it.
Good idea. So about how many quilts would you say that you do in a year? Kind of like range, worst year, best year, how for you?
Well, I haven't been doing it that long.
That's
So,
true.
to be perfectly honest, I don't know. I don't do my books. My husband does. He's an accountant. So if you asked him that question, he'd probably be able to answer.
I bet he would have a
I
very
would,
exact number.
yes, he could. He'd get out the spreadsheet, right?
Yes, I understand. I'm also married to an accountant. I totally get it.
Yeah. So I would say probably my first year, 2021, going into 22 was probably my strongest year, if you want to call that a year. Because at that point I had built up a client base in Janesville. And then we moved within the last year and a half, 2 years now. So I lost a lot of quilters because of that. Some of them still travel from Janesville to me, or if I have to go to Janesville for some reason, we'll meet up. And we were doing that for a while when I first moved to the Dells, but the end of my first year going into my second year was probably my best.
Kayla, how far apart is the Dells and where you're at now and where you were before?
It's about an hour and a half.
That's a long ways. Yeah.
It is. And a lot of my long armors will just say, can't drive in the dark.
Or
Or
the
stay
snow.
off my clients, excuse me, not my long armors. Their age will stop them from driving in the dark. So
Right.
or just driving in general, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you kind of already touched on this a bit when we were talking about thread and things, but what other services do you provide, or what do you sell? Like backing, battings, things like that?
So I don't have any overhead with fabric. That's something I don't know that I'll ever do, especially in the near future, because there's so many options out there, right? And I can't provide them all. I do have batting for sale, and I have black, white, and natural 80/20, because 80/20 is my biggest seller. And I have a poly and I have a cotton. Um, Another service I provide is binding. Um, I can put it on with my long arm, so I can machine on one side and let them hand do it. I can machine both sides for them if they want, or I have a full service, which is a separate fee that I machine bind it with my long arm and then I hand stitch it. So that's something I provide. Something I'd like to do more of, but I don't know that people know that I do, is to be able to baste a quilt for any hand quilters. That's something that we can do for our clients. But typically my clients, they know what they want. They come in and they say, this is what I want. See you in 2 weeks.
Right. Let's see. Holly asked, when you meet with the client, do you have a form that you fill out with them that asks like thread color, pattern, that kind of thing? Hi,
Yeah.
Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
So actually I have a chicken scratch one right here, but
Oh.
this is what I use. It's got information that I know that I shouldn't forget when I'm talking to them. So I do name, address, email, phone number. If they have a special name for their quilts, some people really do, because it's artwork, right? So they take pride in that. The size of the quilt, and that's mostly for me to write that information in later. Their pattern selection, thread color, batting choice, binding if they want it. I also always ask if I have their permission to post their stuff on social media. Because as we know, a lot of quilters gift their quilts. So they don't necessarily want me posting it on my Facebook page and tagging them if it's for their adult son or daughter that sees their stuff on Facebook, and then it gives the surprise away. So I'm always cautious, and I always ask before I post anything, because I don't want to ruin a surprise.
Absolutely. So, Kayla, what would you say was the hardest part of growing your business?
Whoa, that's a tough question, because I've enjoyed a lot of aspects of it. I think it's probably just getting customers. I mean, especially with the move, that's been probably the biggest thing for me, moving from Janesville to the Dells. When we moved, we sold our house without having a home to live in. We moved into an old farmhouse while ours was being built. So at that time, my machine was at my parents' house. So traveling back and forth, for me, I just didn't take the time to really put myself out there in the new location, because honestly, I didn't want the work. I mean, I did, right? But I knew it was okay to take a step back. And that's the beauty of having a business like this, is that I don't have a storefront that I have to keep open or
Right.
keep the lights on. You know, I've got the overhead of my machine and my batting, but the machine's taken care of, right? So I've got my batting left, but those are small things. So I think the move was the hardest transition, and putting ourselves out there in a new area. But for the most part, it's going great, and I've liked a lot of how it's worked out so far. So
Awesome. Okay.
So, has there been any change in technology that you can think of that has happened since you started that's made it easier now than when you first began?
no, you probably missed it. I bought the machine in 21. So I've only had mine just under 3 years here in July. It'll be 3 years. Um, I mean, Facebook has changed in 3 years. TikTok has changed in 3 years. Instagram has changed. It's all changed, but they're small enough things that you can adapt to it.
Gotcha.
She did, however, get the approach feet system recently, so she's a big fan of that change.
I am.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. Every additional tool can really help.
Mhm.
Yes. I mean, the Ascend would be a nice upgrade, but I've been told that's what I need next, but I don't know if I can bite the bullet yet.
Donna said
Well,
Donna
ev-
says, yes, you do.
everybody
It's been
tells
worth
us
every penny.
everybody tells us that there's no reason to delay or to wait because that just is some number of months that you don't get to enjoy it. So,
There is that. Touche.
Yeah.
well, so and of course, I'm going to have to go back and watch the beginning of this because I missed your whole interview, Kayla, but who's been your biggest cheerleader and support system through this?
Well, it's got to just be my family altogether as a whole. Every part of the business has been touched by somebody in my family somehow. I've got accountants in my family. I've got web designers in my family. I have piecers in my family that let me quilt their things for promotional, pictures and whatnot for advertising. So they all have a little spot. They all have a little specialty that really has turned my business into what it is. So
That's cool.
yeah, it's awesome. And of course, anybody that takes the time to like a photo on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or share something. I mean, it doesn't seem like much and it doesn't take much time to do, but anytime somebody does that, it's huge because it touches that many more people that maybe I just can't get myself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely. So what kind of impact has this quilting business made in your life? Like the ability to control your personal schedule and the extra money that it might bring in?
Well, I know people say, "Oh, my gamble has changed my life," and I've heard a lot of that lately, and it actually isn't just a joke. It has. I bought mine to have a creative outlet and to have something to call my own and to be able to help support my family with. And it keeps me at home with my kids and I can still be mom, right? Um, but within a year and a half of having my machine, I applied for a position with you guys as an educator. And so that has now taken me away from home, changed things up a little bit. I'm on tour now, traveling with you all, but it's turned into something that I never imagined it would turn into, right? You start with something small and it grew very quickly and has kind of gotten out of control, right? But it's something that I've really enjoyed and take pride in what I do.
So, what's something that you wish somebody would have told you when you first started?
Probably don't be afraid to make mistakes and screw up. I mean, that's just be part of being a human and natural, but I haven't taken the time to really free motion play or do some of these other things because I keep telling myself I don't have time for it. But I think the fact is that that's scary, right? And for me,
Yes,
it's
I
scary.
understand.
And it's something that it's okay to be imperfect or not perfect with. And I don't like not having that control. That's part of me and being very type A. So I think just taking the time to slow down and to really connect with your machine and what you're doing, and be okay with making mistakes.
Mhm. I I heard I don't know if I read it or this idea that I came across, and I think it applies in a lot of aspects of life, which is that when you are afraid of something, when you're afraid of doing something, or the thought of doing something scares you, you need to look at that really closely and examine, is it, are you afraid of it because that is actually the thing that you need to do right now in your life?
Sure.
I mean, maybe it's just that it's spiders and they're scary, but many times there's a thing that you're afraid of doing, and if you were to really look at it square in the face, you would realize, oh, well, I'm afraid of it because that's my next step in growth or whatever. So,
Yeah, and that definitely is part of it. I mean, anytime I get together with my Gamble coworkers, they always say, "Oh, you can do it. It's easy, no problem. It's fun." And I go, "You're crazy. No thanks. Move on next." But they're all great and encouraging, and it's a great team to be a part of. But still doesn't terrifies me still.
what advice would you give to somebody who wants to follow in your footsteps? What would you tell them?
Um, Everything works out for a reason. It, like we're saying, if you're scared to do it, um, jump in. There's always something to fall back on. There's always something there. If you really want it, right, you're going to make it work. And I think, Shandy, that's why I told you maybe in our interview, you said, well, how are you going to be able to travel with kids? And how are you going to be able to do this? I said, you don't understand. If this is something that I want, my husband, my family, and I will figure it out. We'll do it. So if starting your own business and having a long arm is something that you want to do, you have to have the drive and determination, but do it. It'll work itself out. It really will.
Cindy has a question for you. She said, random question, but what's the story behind your business name?
Okay.
31 Lemons.
No, it's a good story. So 31 Lemons, 31 was chosen because of Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. And that verse, if you don't know it, it's it's about attitude and virtues of being a godly woman. And that's something that I want at the center of my business is my faith. And then lemons, you can see the little lemon back here too. That is because of my daughter. She was 4 when we first introduced this idea. And we said, okay, kids, like we sat them down, like family meeting, right? Like you see in movies. That's what we did. And we said, hey, mom's going to start a business. And before we could even spit anything else out, my daughter said, oh, save all the Amazon boxes. What are you talking about? She said, save all the Amazon boxes. Oh, okay. Why? What, like, coming from left field, she's 4. We don't know where she's going with this. We're here to talk about a business. And she said, oh, I'm gonna build a lemonade stand and I'm gonna sell your stuff outside.
Oh.
And oh, can you save extra boxes so Emerson can sell the boy stuff and I can sell the girl stuff? So that's where the lemons came from. And lemons also have a lot to do with, I think I looked it up, like what does a lemon symbolize, right? And longevity, happiness, and friendship were the 3 that kept coming up. And I thought, well, longevity, that goes with creating an heirloom piece, right? When you have a machine like this, you're building quilts that will stand the test of time. Happiness, typically people give these quilts away, and we create friendship through any guilds or meeting other people. So it's just something that kind of came full circle with everything. So 31 was because of scripture, and lemons was because my daughter.
Proverbs 31.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
That's
And
great.
I was 31 when we started doing it. So that was a perk to that number, right?
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, we'll switch over to Donna, but Kayla, if you have any input for us, please feel free to chime in. And Donna, you are with Donna Q's Creations, right? Is the name of your
Yes.
shop?
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
I
correct.
know we asked this when we first came on, but can you remind us of where home is for you?
In Enumclaw, Washington, about 45 minutes outside of Seattle.
Okay. Awesome.
Mm-hmm. I told my husband when I was moving here, because he already lived here, that he was moving me to the Garden of Eden. It's just
Yeah.
a beautiful, beautiful area.
And wet a lot.
It's very wet. We're in one of the rainiest areas of the United States.
Yep.
But that's why it's beautiful, right?
That's why it's beautiful and green and lush and plush. Yep, it's also wet and soggy.
When the sun comes out, though, it is glorious. So in that area, I mean, the whole area is kind of a metropolitan area, but there's also a lot of rural areas. It
Yes.
where do you live specifically?
I'm in what's called semi-rural.
Okay.
It's 3.5 miles to the center of town, 3 miles to Safeway, and we have 2.5 acres out here. The area is zoned for 5-acre lots only now, so you can't parcel down below 5 acres out here. And our neighbor has cows, and others have chickens, and that's just the way it is out here.
Sure.
Now,
Heaven, kind of.
yeah, my computer's doing something weird. There we go. I'm back.
So how long have you been long arm quilting, Donna?
I got my gamel in 2016 in October.
Okay.
Okay, so that's 7 years. And I had other units before the gamel, but when I found the gamel on sale on Craigslist, I told my husband, "You get me that gamel. I don't care. You get me that gamel." Because gamel is what I wanted.
Right. Right.
And I started out with a gamel classic 26-inch. Before that, I had my first one was a Flynn. Do you know what a Flynn is? That's where you
I've
got
not
these.
seen one. I've not seen one. I've heard of
Okay,
it.
with a Flynn, you have these pipes that you set on top of your table, and you assemble it inside of your regular domestic sewing machine, and you move their quilt goes across the 2 pipes, and then you move the whole pipes
Oh yeah. Yep.
underneath your domestic sewing machine. And your
So
domestic sewing
how
machine
long
is
did you do that for?
2 quilts,
2 quilts.
small ones,
Right.
2 wall hangings. Yeah. And I said, "Oh, I love this business of doing the quilting through my quilt, but this machine will not meet my needs."
Yeah.
So I
So
did 2
that
quilts
was the first attempt was with the Flynn.
with the Flynn. My
Uh-huh.
second one was with a Cunique.
Uh-huh.
No, my second one was with a FAF on a long arm frame, which
Sure.
I bought that used also inexpensively. It was less than $1,000. And I set that up in my room, and I made maybe 1 or 2 quilts on it. And I said, "Nope, this isn't going to meet my needs either." And I
Now,
started
when
asking
you said it was
questions.
a FAF, are you referring to the ones that were basically a Tin Lizzie, but private labeled?
It might have been, but it
How
was
big
a
was the throat? Was it 13 or 14?
16-inch.
Okay, yeah,
I think it was a 16-inch.
that's probably the Tin Lizzie version. Yep, yep.
Might
So
be.
you did
Yeah.
that for a couple of quilts, and then the
And
CUNY.
then I said, "This is just," well, I don't want to anti-advertise for them either, but this is just a
Well,
piece
it's
of crap. I'm going somewhere else.
yeah,
I want a real quilting machine. And I was at the Sew Expo that year and I saw the Qnique, which was inexpensive, something I could afford. So I bought the Qnique for like 3,000 and I sold it for the same price I paid for it. And I had that one about 6 months when the Gamel came up for sale on Craigslist out here and also on the Long Arm University's website. And I said, honey, we are buying that machine. I want a Gamel. Because by then I had done enough research that I knew what I wanted.
So was a business part of your original, like at what point did you form the idea that I could do quilts for other people for money?
Well, in order to justify buying my Gamma long arm, I had to tell my husband I would sew for other people to make money. But it wasn't something that I originally really wanted to do. But by the time I had my Gamma for a few months, I definitely wanted to sew not only for myself, but for others. And I started with just the 26-inch classic, not computerized. So
So,
I
so
started hand
you
guiding.
told your husband what he needed to hear, and you were willing to make good on that promise.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to be a liar.
Well, sure, of course,
Yeah.
but then somehow it kind of sucked you in. How did that happen?
Well, once I had the classic, and I saw everything that this machine could do. I've been a chiropractor for 30 years. And at that point, I'd been a chiropractor for 25. And I knew that I would be retiring soon, or at least semi-retiring. So I needed something else that would add to the family income without taking me out of a craft. Because I'm a very hands-on and very creative person, and the hands-on of doing hand-guided, I loved it. I really loved it. And I also could see it as something that my husband could join me in when he retired from chainsaw carving. So um, when I first had the Gamel installed, it was just being installed when I was leaving 2 days later for a trip. And I left the machine. I knew my husband and next door neighbor, who's an artist, were going to play on it. So I told them what the rules were for playing on it while I was gone, because I knew they were going to do it even if I didn't give them permission. So I told them park it in the garage, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I came home and here I had been practicing E's and L's and C's and ocean waves, and my husband and his neighbor took the piece that I had done on just a muslin sandwich, and they had made this entire scene with a house and a satellite dish and a wheelbarrow in the yard and Mount Rainier in the background and trees and pathways. And I came home, I saw it, and I made it into a pillow for the next door neighbor for his Christmas present.
That's
And
cool.
so, and that was all hand guided by two men who had never touched the sewing machine. And so, we get afraid of one or the other, the hand guiding or the machine guided, because I have people who hand guide who are scared to death to try and use the Statler. Even though they have it on their machine, they won't use it. And because they haven't had a class in it and they're afraid they're going to screw it up and they're going to ruin their machine. And I've just said, go to the Quilting with Confidence and get going. But for them to be able to take the hand guided machine, and when I saw what they did on that and all they were doing was playing, I said, for goodness sakes, Donna, just play, have fun, play, make do, and make yourself the muslin sandwich, Kayla, and just play. Don't expect to do anything fantastic. Just take this blank piece of fabric that's got leftover batting behind it and just play. Have fun. You get over your fear.
Donna, I love that encouragement. I think I think a person might, so I think your husband and his friend were not worried about ruining that fabric because
No,
it was just fabric and they knew they could buy more. And if you draw an analogy, think about a child sitting down in front of a piano. They don't know how to play a piano. They've never had any lessons. But if they plink around with it for a little while, they could probably figure out how to do happy birthday or something, just by ear. And that's what your husband was doing. He was just like, well, this button starts it, and that's so cool.
yeah, it's phenomenal. That pillow was absolutely phenomenal. I came home and I said, well, if they can do that just playing, then I need to stop doing E's and L's and I need to just stand here and play. And it helped me a lot in my journey of hand guiding, because I do both. I do both. Do you have another question, Andrew?
Well, I'm waiting to see how long Shandy's gonna stay silent before she jumps in.
Thanks, Andrew. So you have started, I know you started with the Classic 26, but it sounds like now you have a Statler. What was the journey to upgrade to the Statler?
When I got home, the first class that I took with Quilting with Confidence, my Statler was scheduled to be installed and I was supposed to have 2 weeks to play before I took the Quilting with Confidence thing. While the installer had to have emergency surgery for, I think, a knee replacement. And so my installation got delayed and I didn't have it until after, but all the classes I had signed up for were on the Statler. So I had the classes having never touched the Statler machine. And so I came home from the class and was trying to figure things out for a year, and then went and took Quilting with Confidence again. And I did okay with the Statler, but mostly that time I was just quilting for myself. And I did okay with what I needed to do and figured things out and watched videos and figured out from the videos. But then when I went and took the Quilting with Confidence the second time, I said, oh, this does a lot more than I thought. And this is absolutely wonderful. And that just cinched it for me that I wanted to do it as a business, because I realized how I could make money with it. And I prefer the custom work, like Kayla said. I prefer custom, but edge to edge, point to point, pantographs, that's your bread and butter. The custom is my gravy. And when I get an order for a custom quilt, I'm like, yes, because I'm excited and about coming up and doing that work and how am I going to do this and how can I be creative? And the edge to edge and point to point, boy, that's what pays for the machine. And that's a lot of joy too, because you're adding to the person's quilt, you're bringing them a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how the quilting can change a quilt. I've had customers bring me quilts that say, this has been sitting on my chair for a year and I hate it. Can you just quilt it so I can donate it and be done with it? And they've gotten it back and gone, this is one of my favorite quilts now. This is so exciting. It's amazing what that can do for a piece top.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It'll bring it to life.
Yes, it can bring it to life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Boy, Donna, I was hearing you tell about your challenges with learning the machine, and it just sequence is so important. The original plan for when you were going to get the training, it would have been perfect. It would have worked out great. We're really glad now that we have a new owner training program, and we're not counting on the Quilting with Confidence to get you up and going.
Yeah. Although
yeah.
I really love that. The Quilting with Confidence, I've been again, and it's a really good program for
Yeah.
learning from. Yes.
This
Yeah.
last year, we've had people join us on tour that haven't even purchased their machine yet, and they're test driving it, and this was their way to see what the machine was capable of doing before they even dove in and purchased.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And since then, I bought the machine used, and it was a hand guided only machine. I upgraded to Statler, and then I upgraded to Ascend. And I absolutely love my Ascend. I'm still paying for the Ascend upgrade. It was worth every single penny. The difference in the wheels, the guiding wheels, and the track alone, my tension, since they upgraded it, my tension stays better. I don't have to keep rechecking my tension based on my bobbins. I put my bobbin in, I run it through the TOA, I put my bobbin in, and I do a tension check. And 90% of the time, 95% of the time, the tension is perfect as long as I set to my TOA gauge. I cannot do the hand pull. I gave up on that. I cannot do that. And
You can't count on it.
I can't
Not
count on it.
reliable. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I just don't have the feel. I can't do it. Yeah. But
So,
I love my Ascend.
so Donna, your business right now, um, did you, what was your sense of how much business was available in your area? Um, the other way that we ask that question is, how did you know there was enough business to support another long arm quilter? But you kind of came into it in a roundabout way. But what was your sense of the available business?
When I heard from quilters that there were lead times out there to get their quilt done, especially if they needed it for Christmas, that they had to turn their quilt, they had to get on schedule by July to get a quilt for Christmas.
Right.
All right. That I said, oh, well, then there's plenty of business out there. And I went and talked to, we only have one quilt shop that's really close, and it's a small shop. She was running a single gamble and now runs two, and she still has overflow of business that she tells people, if you need it by that deadline, you need to contact one of these other long armors in the area. And then there's another that's quilt shop called Ben Franklin's that's sort of between a private held quilt shop and Joann's. It's in between those two kinds of stores. And they also have, they don't do any long arming themselves, but they refer to local long armors. And so they are now going to be referring to me also. And the guild people were having troubles with getting all of their quilts done that they needed for charity and that sort of stuff. And I don't charge the guild for their charity quilts, but that gives me a name within the guild to get business. It's one of the ways I get business.
So specifically, what are the things that you did to find new customers? I mean, you've got connections with these quilt shops. What did you do to make those connections?
Went in and talked to them. I had bought fabric from them before. I introduced them to the guild, and encouraged them to come into the guild and have a presence there and to be at our quilt show that we put on every year locally. And that kind of endeared me to the quilt shop owners, that I was trying to help them to build their business and not just take from them. And I forgot what your question was, Andrew.
You just answered it. I was
Oh,
just
good.
asking, what actions did you take specifically to find those customers and to make those connections? And I love what you just said uh, about how you looked at your wanting to make a friendship with this quilt shop owner, and you think to yourself, well, what does she need? How can I
Right.
help her to be successful? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Yeah. And don't ever tell a quilt shop owner how to run their business. They don't like that. But it's very good. It's very good to encourage them to participate in your guild's quilt show or to advertise in your guild's newspaper. You know, even
Yeah.
if she might get long arm business that I didn't get, there's enough to go around. So if she advertised in the guild's newsletter that she long armed, then that's not going to hurt me
No,
because we're both going to get business out of it.
there's lots of business out there.
Yes.
So, you've had a lot of different steps along the way where you had to put out some money, from the flint
Yes.
all the way through the different machines. Um, did you ever need to take out a loan or
I
how?
have taken out, I have financed each step of the way. I have financed, I've paid off everything except my Ascend ahead of schedule. And that's because, and I used my car as my collateral
Okay.
rather than using the long arm. Because if I used the long arm, it was a business loan and it was a higher percentage rate. But by using my car as my collateral, my car was paid off. So I used my car as my collateral, and that lowered my interest rate down. So my rate on my Ascend is like 2.3%, something like that. And I'm paying that off on schedule on purpose because it's so much cheaper than my credit card expense and my other loans that I have, that I'm putting my extra money into paying off my other debt.
Donna, thank you for mentioning that approach. It's one that we also mention to people, but sometimes they don't consider it. You can walk into your bank, preferably it's your bank or your credit union, the place where you have your checking account. And you can generally, in less than an hour, walk out with a loan on an RV that you already own free and clear. If you have the title for the RV or for the car or the pickup truck or whatever, they have a really good, well figured out system for doing those loans. Because everybody who wants to buy a car, checks with their bank.
Right.
And it's very easy. And I think more people should look at it because now, obviously, if you already owe a bunch of money on the car, there's no equity there.
Right.
But if you own
Right.
it free and clear, you can tap
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. We've tapped our vehicles for more than one thing. And I've been a business owner for 30 years because I have had my chiropractic business. So you learn a lot along the way that pertains to both businesses.
So, do you still do the chiropractic, or are you doing both, or did you transition?
I still practice 3 mornings a week as a chiropractor. And then I long arm on Thursday and Friday.
Is your goal to get completely into the long arm, or what's your plan?
My goal is to go completely to long arming. I'm almost 70. I'm very happy to be doing something that's a little easier on my body. Chiropractic is hard on your wrists and arms. No.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I never thought about that before. Chiropractors have saved my life a few times, uh, but I never thought about what it takes out of them to do it. I'm a big guy, so it takes sometimes a lot.
Sometimes it would take a lot. I don't work on any big men anymore. I work mostly on women and children. I've had a thriving practice. I now only take care of 12 patients a week, and I can make a living almost with no staff on that 12 patients a week. So it's hard to close out the rest of the office because it nets close to $3,000 a month, but uh without staff. So,
Right.
you know, that
Boy,
that
that's almost as good as long arm quilting for a business,
that is correct.
except
I
you can't
can
take a vacation from those patients because they need you.
correct. I can't because they won't let me go. But
Right.
you know, then I can double my income with the, and not, I mean, I love the long arming so much. It's so creative. It's taps into my art skills that, it gives me a creative outlet, which I need. I really need. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Mhm.
Uh, let's talk about your rates for a minute. How do you give people a quote for the quilting?
Well, I usually give them an estimate and I tell them this is an estimate. And I give them kind of a range when they drop their quilt off. If they're going for an edge to edge, point to point, and it's a small quilt, it's usually pretty accurate. The going rate around here is between 1.5 and 2.5 cents a square inch. I won't work for 1.5. So it's just too low. Um, I will work for 2 to 2.5 on a small quilt that's edge to edge, that's well pieced. But then if I have to repair the quilt, if I have to ease in um, a poorly squared up quilt, a bless your heart quilt, as they call it. I've had one woman that doesn't have good eyesight and I've had to put her seams together because she's got seams that she missed one side of the fabric. And so I've had to repair those for her, and sending it back to her to fix herself. That's really hard to do because she's in her 90s and she's still very active in our guild. She makes charity quilts for the guild. So I just kind of graciously help her out a bit. She also has good finances for herself, so I'm not worried about having to charge her for those repairs. So we sneak it in as a thread charge or, you know, something so I don't have to insult her when she picks up her quilt. Thread charge, batting charge, you know, add $5 here or $5 there to
Got it.
figure it out. So I don't have to insult her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my fees range then from 2 cents a square inch up to about 10 or 12. And that's for intense custom.
Yeah. And you said earlier how much you enjoy doing the custom.
I do. I love doing the custom. And I do both hand guided and I do machine guided. And I do combination of both on the same quilt sometimes. It depends upon the person because my hand guided is not as neat and tidy as the um, machine guided, which is always looks perfect. So the hand guided has a little bit more Grandma Moses look to it rather than Rembrandt. But it just depends on what the customer wants. And we talk about that when they drop it off. And then I have some customers that drop it off and say, Donna, just do your magic. I don't care if you point to point or I don't care how you do this. Just make it the best quilt that you can. And then I will look at it and then I call them and advise them and I say, well, we could do this point to point pattern and it would be about this much. Or I could really make it the best it could be and it'll be custom and it'll be this much with the ruler work.
Yeah.
Now,
Kind of giving them a option or B option.
yes. And it's amazing. Sometimes they take that A option, but when they've brought me a quilt that they've spent a lot of time piecing, they almost always want to go with the custom.
Yeah. They've
Yeah.
got a lot invested in it already.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like because I found so much of your story to be interesting and I dug in with some different questions, I'm going to skip over some that might be a little bit more boring, but I want to get to this one, which is what did you find to be the hardest part of building your business?
The hardest part for me in building my business is that I've had people tell me that I can be the most wonderful person and I can also be a skunk crossed with a porcupine. And so sometimes I prickle people and I really watch myself not to do that. But I think the hardest part of my building my business has been my own personality. Because somebody could tell me in the beginning, somebody could tell me, well, I really want point to point on here. And I would say something like, if I put point on here, it's going to absolutely ruin your quilt. You really want to go custom. And what I should have been saying was something a little bit more tactful. And so
That
the
is,
hardest part of building my business has been myself.
that is a very self-aware answer.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
have learned to be more tactful in how I speak to my customers and how I approach it. And oh, if you want point to point on here, that's going to be so lovely. Let's pick a pattern that will go with your quilt.
Yeah.
You
Interesting.
know,
We got a
it's
question, a write-in question from
uh,
Holly. She addressed this one for you, Donna. She says, when you meet with the client, do you have a form that you fill out with them for the thread color and the pattern, or just in general, how do you consult with them?
when I first started doing my work with customers, I did have a form. Now I use a blank piece of paper because I found that I have a form for myself that has the questions I need to be sure are answered, that I liked having more freedom in my space. So I have more room for note taking and for
Do you ever
just
sketch a layout or anything?
I do sketch a layout. I have a large sheet of acrylic that has blue tape around the outside edge of that acrylic sheet. And I set that, sometimes I'll set their quilt out on I have one of those 72 by 40 cutting table. And I will put their quilt out on the cutting table and then set my acrylic sheet over the top, and we'll draw designs and take pictures with the iPhone. Well, I don't have an iPhone, I have a Droid, but with my phone.
Yep.
And that way we can come up sometimes with a pattern that they like, if I'm going to custom especially, because it shows them what that is going to look like. And if
Well,
they want to,
it gets the scale too.
yes, it gets the scale. And
Yeah.
if we're going to do an edge to edge and we can see the pattern on the screen up on my computer, which I can see from my cutting table, then I can vaguely sketch out that pattern on the acrylic over their quilt so they can see what it's going to look like on their quilt. And that's helpful.
Okay.
Not everybody can see if it's not put in front of them.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
So, who's been your biggest cheerleader and your support system?
My friends, my close friends from the guild have been my biggest cheerleaders. My husband has been helpful in that, but my biggest cheerleaders are friends and the people themselves when they pick up their quilts have been really helpful to me, because most of the time when they pick up, it's, oh my goodness, I just love it. You've done such a great job. Thank you. Even on
It,
ones when I thought could have been done a lot better in the beginning, I thought, oh, I hand guided this. This would have looked a whole lot better if it would have been done with the Statler. And especially once you learn how to trim inside and outside. Um, but the fact that they're so in love what you do, it's something they can't do for themselves.
right. Right. It gives
Yeah,
you a lot of validation, doesn't it?
it does. It does. Do you agree with that, Kayla?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it it's amazing what what they say and how that can affect you. And like I post almost everything I do on Facebook, and the comments are awesome. And it's really fun when you tag the person that it's their quilt, and then their friends start, oh, look at that, that's awesome. Because they a lot of quilters, well, not, I shouldn't say a lot of quilters, but there's some quilters like myself that their friends don't understand their trade. When I said I was going to
Ah,
buy this machine, they're like, you're going to do what? You're going to buy how much? You're going to spend how much on that, and you're going to start a business? My friends don't get it. They don't understand, not in the
They
quilting
don't.
world. But when you start posting this stuff on Facebook or other social media platforms, you get affirmation from so many different directions, and that is just awesome.
Yeah. And then it's crazy that they actually pay you for this.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
So so Donna,
Mm.
the quilting money and the control of your personal schedule, uh, how has that had an impact in your life?
Um, I absolutely love that. And I've been in I've had set hours for my office, and it's patient, 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 patient. And even though I've worked for myself, my schedule is predetermined and preset. And now that I'm doing the long arming, if I have something that comes up, like the other day, I had a friend who had to have somebody take her to the hospital for an emergency visit, and she ended up with a pacemaker. And yeah, and I was able to drop what I was doing, stop and run and take care of her, and then come back and finish the quilt. And what a joy that is, to be able to not only be in charge of my own schedule, but to be able to alter it when it needs to be altered, and not be, well, I can't get there until after 5 o'clock because I have patients till then.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a theme we hear from so many people is the freedom to be the kind of person you want to be because you're not locked into your work schedule.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What is something that you wish somebody would have told you when you first started with that Flynn?
That I should just start with the gamel. um, I liked the journey that I went on to get to where I am today, because I don't have any questions about that. I arrived where I want to arrive, and where I needed to end up. But the journey along the way it was interesting in what I learned. With each thing, I learned something that advanced me to the next level. And so it was a good journey. But if I could have saved the money in the first place and shortened the journey and gone straight to a gamel, I would have done that. Perhaps I could have done more research before I started, but it was a good journey.
There were things you just didn't know yet.
I didn't know, and I didn't know I was going to love building the sandwich so much. I loved piecing, but I
Right.
didn't know. I know I don't like hand stitching, so I didn't want to hand stitch my quilts. And I did not enjoy doing them on a domestic, which I know people who do huge quilts on a domestic. That is not me. And so I have a 14-foot. My frame's a 14-foot. So I get the orders for the big king size quilts.
So if there's another lady like yourself, a couple hundred miles away, and she's thinking, "Boy, I want to do what Donna's done," is do you see any reason why anybody couldn't just jump in and do just like you did? Start
No, I
making a
don't.
few quilts here and there and
As
make
as
a friendship with the quilt shop and
No, I don't see any reason why they couldn't do it. The I'm actually People say, no, you're not. I'm actually a very shy person. And I hide it well, and I mask it well by being straightforward and coming out. But inside, I really like to be back behind my mother's skirt still and hanging on to her knees. Um, and so for me, getting out in the public and advertising myself is a challenge. And if I can get out there and do that, when that is that much of a challenge for me, so can other people.
wow.
And
I
one of the
I
one,
just I just love the grit that you explain that's a gritty kind of approach. It's like, you know what? Sometimes you have to do something that's not easy.
Right,
And
right.
that's where the personal growth comes in, right?
Yes. Hmm. My friend has a friend with a 4-year-old, and the 4-year-old says, I can do hard things. And yes, I can do hard things. And one of the hard things for me is being out and talking one-on-one with people. I'd rather be the speaker at an organization than be in the audience having to introduce myself and carry on one-to-one. So one-to-one is hard for me. And in this business, you have to do one-to-one.
You do. Yep.
You do. Mhm.
Well, you must be getting good enough at it that your customers are obviously loving the work that you do. So
One of the things you haven't asked yet is what do I add on in my business? And I
I
do like
did,
Kayla. Pardon?
I did not ask that. Go ahead and fill us in.
No. Can I answer it?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry. One of my like Kayla, I do a thread charge, and I charge by the bobbin for thread. So if I have 6 bobbins, there's a charge per bobbin to help pay for the thread in the quilt. And I do batting. And in addition to the battings that she mentioned, for babies' quilts, I maintain my stock of bamboo batting because bamboo batting is self-disinfecting as long as it's not bleached or washed in extremely hot water. And I use that as a selling point to my customers for their baby quilts. And the bamboo batting is a little more expensive, so I make a little bit more profit off of it. And but I do have bamboo batting here for baby quilts or for old folks quilts where, people with dementia and stuff where they sit and they hug their quilt all day and they chew on the corner and stuff like that. That makes the bamboo batting is a really good thing to have as an addition.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I think we pretty much I did skip around a little bit.
That's
And
okay.
for those who really love it to be the same every time, what's that,
I
Shandy?
said you lost me. I couldn't keep up with your questions.
Well, I realized after a little while, I thought, you know what, here you uh had to carry the entire webinar for the first half. And so I'm gonna come in and I'll do the other half. So
Okay, we're glad you got to go see Carl. That's wonderful.
Yep.
yeah.
Yes.
Holly did ask about the supplies, extra that you sold. So I think we answered that one. She also asked if anyone is going to be at Quilting with Confidence in Oklahoma City. So I know Kayla will be at Quilting with Confidences in general, but probably doesn't know which ones yet. I'm sure the rest of us will be popping in. What about you, Donna? Are you going to make it to one this year?
I don't know. I've been looking at the schedule. I would like to make Hawaii. My husband and I had a trip planned to Israel in March, and of course that's been canceled. So we're trying to decide whether or not we're leaving our deposit or getting our money back, and that will affect whether or not I can join you in Hawaii. I would love to do that. But we're still watching the schedule and trying to figure out. I've been to Quilting with Confidence 3 or 4 times, and I would still go again. Next time I'm going to do the hand guided. I've done machine guided a number of times, and now I'm going to do a hand guided program.
It's so amazing the people that you meet when you go to those. And when you go to one that's local to you, there's a lot of advantages because you don't have to find somebody to feed the dog, and you can sleep in your own bed and things like that. But when you go to one that's far away, you meet the other people that you wouldn't have met. So it's really, you can't go wrong by going to Quilted with Confidence. So.
No. The closest ones here this year is 3 hours up to 3.5 to 4 hours up to Vancouver, Canada, or down to the one that's near Bend, Oregon, and that's about a 4-hour drive also.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's a little
you would
bit,
spend the night. Yeah.
I would spend the night and I would be meeting new people. I'd like to go to the one in Vancouver because Canadians are a bit different. And I would love to hear their take on a lot of things.
Well, I was just there yesterday, as a matter of fact. I was in
Uh-huh.
Vancouver, and Canadians are different, and their market's a little different, and everything. But if you decide to go, I'm sure you will enjoy it.
I'm
Yeah,
sure I will.
yeah,
I'm sure I will. And I'll learn more.
yeah,
I've learned every one I've attended, and I've attended many.
yeah.
And I would, yeah,
They're a lot of fun. I enjoy
yes.
teaching on them and being out on the road. So
42 stops this year. So if anybody's interested, gamble.com/quilting with confidence, or if you're interested in Hawaii, like Donna mentioned, that's gamble.com/Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a, I don't know that I can give it justice by describing it, but there's the 2-day training that you take, but there's also a 1-day event that we're doing. Shandy, how would you best explain that?
Yeah, it's called Confidence Essentials, and it's a day that's free of charge. We just ask you sign up ahead of time because we do need a head count and want to make sure we have seating for everyone. But it's a great day if you are just interested in learning about long arm. Like if this is kind of a new world to you and you think you might want to come and hang out with the educators and learn some fun things or learn some basics, you can do that. Or if you already have a machine, and you want to learn some things about maintenance, we have a maintenance class as well. And, or if you have another brand, we'd still love to see you come and meet it's a great chance to network and meet the local quilters in your area as well. So lots of opportunity, and, you can get some hands-on experience on a machine, get that, that full day and a really in-depth learning experience. Kayla mentioned before you got here, Andrew, that's kind of what inspired her quilting journey, is she went to like a longer kind of hands-on class, like with her mom. And so,
Okay.
yeah, so it's a great opportunity to get to know a machine and the
Right,
quilters.
right. Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you guys both for sharing your stories. I'm gonna make sure to listen to the beginning and get Kayla's story, because even though we've met in person, I don't know what her answers to these questions were.
Well,
So,
yeah,
find out what that was.
we can chat in March.
Sure, sure. All right.
all right.
Well, thank you guys so much. And
You're
we'll
welcome.
see everybody on the next episode.
All right.
Sounds good. Have a good night, guys.
Bye.